How excited are you that we've come to the exciting part of the book of First Samuel? This is when we finally meet David. Yay! Okay, so let's get into it. I'll share lessons from chapters 17 to 15 to 17. So we start, at the end of obviously Saul's military conquest. And here they meet the Amalekites. The Amalekites were descendants of Esau who'd attacked Israel at Rephidim during the Exodus. That was around chapter 17, when God was leading them out of Egypt. And God had devoted them to destruction as a result, because no one was meant to touch them as they were coming out. Saul and the people had no right to anything from the land, and certainly not saving the king, because the Lord had said destroy them. So if they were marked for destruction, remember, if you remember, in Jericho, everything was meant for God. So that was a city that was marked for destruction. So God said, destroy everything. But remember, Acah and his sin that caused, and then when they caused obviously the defeat, and then when he had purged, when the land had been purged, when they went to Ai, God said, now you can take this, that, and the other. So the Amalekites were supposed to be for destruction. I believe it was the same thing, but Saul saved King Agag. Saul proved to be a people pleaser, and I mentioned this yesterday. In spite of God's command, he chose to let the people keep the choice cattle under the guise of intended sacrifice. And when Samuel asked about it, he now lied, or tried to put the blame on the people. I thought that was really weird. God rejected him as king, mostly because of his lack of obedience. He was more concerned with religious performances than doing God's will. Remember that saying, obedience is better than sacrifice, which Samuel told him, when he found out about the cattle that was kept. And then Samuel ended up having to kill King Agag himself. In 1526, Saul hears for the second time that God had rejected him as king, and his reaction is still that of religious performance. Like, to me, I didn't even see any real, I don't know, what could he have even done? But then that reaction was a bit weird to me. No doubt, God had disappointed God, but he also disappointed Samuel, because Samuel was really rooting for him. And Samuel took his rejection very hard and mourned for him. Despite his sadness, Samuel still obeyed God's command when he asked him to go and anoint David at Bethlehem, albeit obviously privately at the time. And did you see the same pattern? Because Saul was anointed privately before he was anointed publicly, and we see the same thing sort of happen here with David. God indeed doesn't consider outward appearances only. He doesn't look at just what people look at, but he looks at the heart. And this was evident every time Samuel figured that, remember when he figured that Eliab, his first brother, had to be the one, because he kind of bore a resemblance to Saul, tall and handsome. And God is like, I almost felt it was like, yeah, you've already seen what tall and handsome can do. Leave that one. That's not what I'm interested in. The Spirit of the Lord came upon David, and he, after he was anointed, and it was evident. While Saul became plagued with a distressing spirit or an evil spirit, many believe that it was like a spirit of depression and schizophrenia, just like, something just not good. His servants recommended David for not only his harp skills, but they also said the Lord was with him. Among his other accomplishments, that was one of the reasons why his servants asked for David. So I believe that when the Spirit of God is really upon someone, there's a difference, and people can see it clearly, as demonstrated here. God judged Saul by taking his spirit from him and leaving him to rule in his own wisdom and strength, as well as allowing a spirit that caused depression and madness to plague him. And then we come to David and Goliath, that story that we have heard from childhood that just gives us the kind of faith that we need to just trust God. And here are a few things I found out about Goliath that I didn't know. So Goliath was 9 feet, he was over 9 feet tall. And Goliath scared the crap out of Saul and the Israelites. David, like Jonathan before him, put his trust in God to defeat Goliath. We saw that evident by the things that he said when he found out about him and was like, how dare you? But something that came to me was Eliab, that brother, clearly had beef with David, right? Because he judged his intention immediately. He heard that David was asking about the battle. Could it be because of his anointing? Because obviously his brothers knew that he was anointed, and maybe that one felt that it should have been him instead of because he was like, you, I know you very well, you are blah, blah. And I was like, where is this coming from? You have been with these Israelites for the past 2 weeks, hiding out in the mountains while Goliath came every day to torment you, and there was nothing you could do. Somebody is here to try and save the day, and the first thing you do is have a fit about it. Yeah, I guess that's life, you know. So anyway, David had faith in God, in God's ability to deliver them from Goliath based on his past experiences with God, his past experiences of killing lions and bears in the wilderness. How odd was it that after David had defeated Goliath, Saul was asking who he was and whose son he was? Could he really have forgotten him? That was something that I was like, this is the guy that was playing the harp for you and calming you. But for me, I felt like it was not like, come on, who is this guy really, you know? And he was probably interested in his family and social standing. I couldn't have just reconciled that, this great warrior in his mind now is the same guy who's like the harpist, who helped to soothe him every time that he was plagued. Or maybe he was even too plagued to even know who he was. Who knows? But then something came to me. Remember in 1 Samuel 14:52, where it said, wherever or whenever Saul saw any strong and valiant man, he attached himself to him. This could have been a strategy of Saul, you know, for control, which is why he was looking for, you know, David at the time. Now here's my hashtag getting to know God lesson. God is omnipresent. Even though he doesn't operate within human timings, he's still on time. He was grieved at how Saul turned out, but it wasn't a surprise to him as he already knew. Also that it'll all work out according to his will in the end. But this didn't stop him from feeling grieved, right? And that, I mean, when I read it, God was grieved. So this shows us that God grieves with us when we are down too. God grieves with us when we too miss the mark. But it doesn't change, you know, the ultimate outcome. But God does have that emotion for us, his beloved children. Thank you for joining me. Tomorrow we'll be doing sharing lessons from Samuel 18 to 20 and also Psalm 11 and 59, which were Psalms that correspond to that period. So one thing I would say is that we will be jumping into the Psalms because I'm sure, as you know, David wrote most of the Psalms. And since we're going chronologically, we will be, you know, intertwining some of the stories from 1 Samuel with the Psalms that David wrote during that period. So thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Bye.